The most ridiculous love triangle in the world actually happened to me. After my ex-wife lost her memory, not only did she completely forget her current boyfriend, she even came to cling to me, her ex-husband of 3 years. What's even more intense is, her current boyfriend happens to be my direct boss. Not only does my boss not dare to expose the truth, he even stooped to visit my rented apartment. Watching my ex-wife hug me and claim her ownership in front of him, my boss's face turned green. It all started during that Friday rush hour. I worked overtime until 6:30 that day. So hungry that my stomach was sticking to my back. All I could think about was the Lanzhou ramen set with extra meat and eggs downstairs. I pushed open the company door, looking down at my phone for delivery coupons, when a pair of hands suddenly grabbed my arm. The grip was so strong, as if she were trying to twist my arm off like a chicken drumstick. Into a face that was both familiar and strange. Liu Ruyan, my ex-wife of 3 years, divorced for 3 years. The ex-wife who is currently dating my boss. Her eyes were red. The tip of her nose was red too, looking like a wronged rabbit. She clutched my sleeve tightly, her voice both urgent and soft. Hubby, why did you just get off work? I've been waiting for you for so long. I froze right where I stood. Thousands of hubby comments flashed through my mind like a live stream chat. What did she call me? Was I hallucinating? The Lanzhou ramen. Is there any left with extra meat and eggs? The last thought was obviously out of place. But when a person is in extreme shock, they really do have some bizarre survival instincts. Before I could speak, a deep male voice came from behind. Ruyan. It was my boss, Liu Ruyan's current boyfriend. A recognized elite in the office. 32 years old, a tough guy who earned his own riverfront apartment. At this moment, he was holding 2 cups of coffee, his expression looking like he was watching his stocks crash. Liu Ruyan glanced back at him. Polite yet distant. Excuse me, sir. Do you know my husband? One of the coffee cups in Jibo Chang's hand dropped. The paper cup hit the ground, splashing coffee all over his leather shoe. He didn't look down, but just stared fixedly at Liu Ruyan. His lips trembled. Ruyan, it's me, Bo Chang. Liu Ruyan blinked in confusion. Bo Chang? She tilted her head in thought for a moment, then shook her head sincerely. Sorry, I don't know you. She turned back and clung to my arm again, in the coquettish tone of a young girl. Hubby, let's go home. I'm so hungry. I looked at her, then at Jibo Chang. The thoughts in my head had changed too. It's over. Someone is going to die. Jibo Chang is a man of the world after all. He didn't freak out in the street. Instead, with a suppressed and extreme calmness, he said, Zhao Yuheng, we need to talk. So, the 3 of us went to the hospital. The scene was bizarre. One amnesiac ex-wife, one current boyfriend who had been forgotten, and one ex-husband who was mysteriously being treated as a husband. While registering, Li Ru still wouldn't let go of my hand. I had to fill out the form with my other hand. Jibo Chang stood nearby, his face livid, his gaze like 2 scalpels precisely stabbing the back of my head. I wanted to say, bro, I'm truly innocent. The head of neurology was a middle-aged male doctor. After reviewing all the reports, he pushed up his glasses. The brain CT shows no organic lesions. The preliminary diagnosis is psychogenic amnesia, possibly related to recent psychological stress. What does that mean? Jibo Chang asked. In layman's terms, her brain has automatically blocked a portion of her memory. As of now, her memory seems to have stopped. The doctor looked at Lovrian. Around 3 years ago. 3 years ago was our first year of marriage. Back then we hadn't divorced yet, hadn't started fighting, and there was no Bo Chang yet. Everything was still good. Liu Ruyan sat on the chair in the consultation room, obediently swinging her legs, completely oblivious to the diagnosis. She looked at me, then at Jibo Chang, and suddenly whispered to me, Hubby, why has this person been following us? Has your colleague? Jibo Chang's temple twitched. I quickly added, yes, a colleague, a very close colleague. Liu Ruyan nodded in relief, then gave Jibo Chang a polite smile. Hello there, please look after my husband in the future. Jibo Chang's smile was perfectly curved, but I clearly saw his knuckles turning white from gripping the report. After leaving the hospital, Jibo Chang pulled me aside. He stood at the end of the corridor, with his back to where Liu Ruyan was waiting. His voice was very low, but every word sounded like it was squeezed out from his gritted teeth. Zhao Yuheng. Listen carefully. I'm listening. I stood up straight instinctively. It's not that I'm afraid. It's just that this guy usually has this aura at the office. The kind that makes the whole team tense up in meetings. The doctor said her condition requires a stable environment and she cannot be stimulated. He closed his eyes for a moment, so the next few words were spoken very slowly and heavily, as if each word he uttered was a cut to himself. I'm leaving her with you for now. I was stunned. What did you say? I said she'll stay at your place temporarily, Jibo. Chang opened his eyes, his gaze dark and heavy. In her current memory, there's only you. If we force the truth on her, it might worsen her condition. He paused for a moment, then added, but Zhao Yuheng, let me make this clear first. She is my girlfriend. This is only a temporary measure. The day her memory returns, you'd better disappear on your own. I looked at his expression, and suddenly felt that this man was actually quite pitiful. His girlfriend has amnesia. Forgot him, but remembers her ex-husband. If it were me, I might feel even more miserable than him. Fine, don't worry. I nodded. He'll just act as a temporary nanny. Jibo Chang gave me a deep look, then turned and left. After a few steps, he stopped again, and without looking back he added, she doesn't eat cilantro. She's afraid of the dark when she sleeps. She gets out easily when the seasons change. Then he strode away, his back as rigid as a walking wall. I stood there, suddenly realizing that I knew all those things 3 years ago too. Shortly after Jibo Chang left, a local courier vehicle stopped at the hospital entrance. Jibo Chang had just arranged for his assistant to go to Luyan's current residence to quickly pack some seasonal clothes and essentials. I signed for the box, called a taxi, and took her home. Lu Ruyan carried her suitcase, standing at the doorway of my rented apartment, looking like a judge sizing up a contestant. She tilted her head, staring up and down at this 50 square meter 1-bedroom apartment. In my memory, we were still in our old house yesterday. Why did we move so suddenly? Did I have a blackout? She muttered, looking confused. I cleared my throat guiltily. The lease on the old house was up. You've been so busy with business trips lately. So I went ahead and moved us in first. That old place was the 12-room we rented when we got married. After the divorce, I moved out, and into this cheap little place. She put on her slippers, and took a walk around the room. The living room was tiny. The sofa was a bit old, and half-eaten instant noodles and 2 cans of beer sat on the coffee table. Liu Ruyan turned around, her eyes as compassionate as if looking at a stray animal in need of help. Zhao Yuheng, have you been struggling lately? I'm fine. Why do you care? You call this fine? She pointed to a corner. Why are your socks under the sofa cushion? I rushed over, stuffed the socks into my pocket, and gave a smile that looked worse than a grimace. That was an accident. She sighed, rolled up her sleeves and said, all right. You don't even know enough to hire a cleaner. I watched her skillfully put things away, bringing order to the messy living room bit by bit. Her movements were exactly the same as 3 years ago. Even the way she folded clothes hadn't changed, though she was suspicious of the sudden change in environment. Looking at the familiar version of me made her reluctantly accept the story that I moved, without telling her while she was away. My nose suddenly felt a bit prickly. I turned away pretending to drink water, forcing back those untimely emotions. That night, Liu Ruyan naturally took over the only bedroom, holding my pillow, blanket, and everything else, I stood in the living room, looking at that cramped sofa. I began to seriously question myself. Is this really the treatment of a husband? Husband. Her voice came from the bedroom. Can you leave the living room light on? I smiled. She's still afraid of the dark. Okay. The next morning, I was jolted awake by a sharp alarm. It was the smoke detector. I sprang up from the sofa and rushed into the kitchen. Thick smoke was billowing everywhere. Something on the stove was emitting suspicious black smoke. Luo Yan stood in the haze, holding a spatula, looking utterly dazed and innocent. I wanted to make you a breakfast with love. She blinked, but the eggs seemed to have sacrificed themselves. I glanced at the lump in the pan, completely unrecognizable. Just a black charred mass. This is an egg. It once was. I took a deep breath and pushed it aside. Go sit down. He'll do it, I said. She pouted defiantly, but she still obeyed and sat at the table. I opened the window to vent the smoke, washed the pan and started again. There were still eggs and tomatoes in the fridge from yesterday. I quickly whipped up some tomato and egg noodles, fried 2 sunny side-up eggs, sliced half a cucumber, and arranged it on the side of the plate. And not bragging, but as Zhao Yuheng, I've really honed my cooking after 3 years of living alone. When I brought the noodles to the table, Liu Ruyan's eyes lit up. He took a big slurp of his noodles and said indistinctly, "Hubby, when did your cooking get so good? People have to grow up somehow." I sat across from him, acting all profound. "While you were away on business, I've been. You used to burn even instant noodles before. That was an accident." I decided not to debate this topic with him. He kept his head down, eating his noodles. Stray hairs falling over his forehead. Sunlight streamed in through the window, hitting the side of his face. He was eating very earnestly, cheeks puffed out, like a hamster hoarding food. I looked away and looked down at my soup, reminding myself, temporary nanny, temporary nanny, temporary nanny. The doorbell rang on Saturday afternoon. I opened the door and saw Jibo Chong. He was wearing an expensive-looking casual jacket, carrying a bunch of shopping bags, a scarf from a luxury brand, limited edition perfume, and a box of expensive-looking macarons. I looked down at my cheap t-shirt and boxers, and silently leaned against the doorframe. Zhao Yuhen. He nodded at me, then looked past me at Lo Ruyan in the living room. Liu Ruyan was curled up on the sofa watching TV. She looked up when she heard the noise. "Oh, it's you, Bo Cheng, right?" Jibo Cheng's smile froze for 0.3 seconds. "Yes, it's me. I came to see you." He walked in and placed the gifts on the coffee table. "This is the scarf you've always wanted. And this perfume, too." Liu Ruyan glanced at the colorful bags, then turned to me. "Your colleague is so nice, bringing me gifts." Jibo Cheng's smile stiffened further. I really didn't know what to say. Liu Ruyan suddenly stood up, came up behind me, and hugged my arm with both hands. She rested her chin on my shoulder. "But I don't need anything else. I'm fine as long as I have hubby." When she said that, her tone was incredibly natural. With a sense of casual intimacy, I felt the skin on my back burning up. Jibo Cheng's gaze moved from her arms around me to my face. That look, how can I describe it? If looks could kill, I'd have already been torn to pieces, but he held back, only forcing a slight smile. "You two really have a great relationship." He said it through gritted teeth. He didn't stay long. Before he left, he gave Liu Ruyan a look. Something flashed deep in his eyes. It wasn't anger. It was heartache. The kind that says, "I'm clearly the one closest to you, but you can't even see my pain." After the door closed, Liu Ruyan let go of my arm and skipped over to open the macarons. "Hey, these look so pretty. Hubby, do you want one?" Looking at her, a very complex feeling suddenly surged in my heart. I wondered 3 years ago, if I had treated her as unconditionally as Jibo Cheng does, maybe we wouldn't have gotten divorced. Monday at work, as soon as I sat down, I felt everyone's eyes on me. The news had spread throughout the company. President Ji's girlfriend has amnesia. She forgot Mr. Ji but remembered her ex-husband, who happens to be me, Zhao Yuhen from our team. My colleague Xiao Liu strolled over with a mug, winking and making faces. "Brother Heng, you're the man. Even a script wouldn't dare to write it like this." I didn't even look up. He asked me, "Just one question. Is my sister-in-law staying at your place for now?" Xiao Liu let out a suffocatingly weird laugh. "For now, huh?" "For now." I was just about to smack him with my mouse pad when I looked up and saw Jibo Cheng passing by in the hallway. His footsteps paused for a moment. He glanced at me. That glance was very calm, but I felt like a volcano about to erupt lay hidden beneath that calmness. At noon I took my lunchbox to the rooftop to eat. I've been eating on the rooftop lately, to avoid being stared at in the cafeteria. I didn't expect someone to be there. Already, Jibo Cheng was leaning against the railing, holding a healthy bento box. I turned to leave. He called out, "Cray Yuheng, Mr. Ji." He was silent for a while, then said something that surprised me. "Is she happy lately?" I was stunned for a moment. I remembered Liu Ruyan curling up on the sofa yesterday watching funny videos, laughing so hard she couldn't breathe, almost sprang her Coke onto the remote. I remembered her crouching on the balcony this morning talking to the neighbor's cat, talking for a full 10 minutes. I remembered her following a phone tutorial to fold a crooked paper box, insisting on hanging it on my desk lamp. "She's quite happy," I said. Jibo Cheng lowered his head, staring at the ground beneath his feet. "When she was with me, I gave her the best bags, the best clothes, and the best restaurants. But he paused. It seemed like something was always missing. I didn't know what to say. Sometimes I wonder." He looked up at the gray skyline in the distance. "If what she really wants isn't those things at all." The wind blew across the rooftop, ruffling the hem of his coat. For the first time I felt Jibo Cheng was also just an ordinary man. An ordinary man who doesn't know what to do in a relationship. An ordinary man. "Mr. Ji, I chose my words carefully. You were very good to her. I can tell." He shook his head, didn't respond, and after a long time, he asked, "What about you? Were you good to her?" The question was like a needle pricking my heart. Was I good to her? The year we got married, she wanted to keep a cat. I said cats were too much trouble. She wanted to travel to Yunnan. I said we'd go after we saved more money. She had come home late from overtime, and I'd already be asleep without even leaving a light on for her. I thought that was just real life, but actually, it was just slowly draining her passion bit by bit. Not good enough. I answered honestly. Jibo Cheng glanced at me, said nothing, and turned or walked away. His bento box was never even opened. The first time Liu Ruyan made me feel like things were about to spin out of control was because of a new intern. That noon, the intern Zhao Lin came to my desk to ask about a proposal. Xiao Lin was a cheerful girl. She'd subconsciously lean in when she talked, with a sweet voice. I was explaining the file format to her, when suddenly, I felt a chill down the back of my neck. I didn't realize when Liu Ruyan appeared behind me. She came to bring me lunch. But at this moment she wasn't looking at me, she was staring at Xiao Ling, even wearing a smile. But the curve of that smile made the hair on my back stand up. I know this expression all too well. It's a classic Liu Ruyan look. You're not angry, but you'd better run. This was Liu Ruyan's gentle smile. Xiao Ling, oblivious to the danger, said sweetly, "Hello, I'm the new intern. Brother Xiao is so nice. He's been calling me Xiao. Brother." Liu Ruyan's smile grew even gentler, so gentle that I wanted to crawl under the table immediately. "He's not Brother Zhao." Liu Ruyan placed the lunchbox on my desk, then naturally wrapped her arm around mine. She turned her head and gave Xiao Ling a sweet smile. "It's called hubby, the entire Office fell silent instantly. It was quiet for about 3 seconds. Then Zhao Liu was the first to start clapping, amidst the rising sound of whistles. I wished I could disappear into the floor. But to be honest, the way she held my arm didn't feel like an act. It was the kind that showed she really cared. Her fingers gripped my sleeve, her fingertips applying slight pressure, as if saying, "You're mine." Somewhere in my heart, silent for 3 years, was suddenly tapped gently by something. It didn't hurt, but it was clear. Jibo Chong threw a party for Liu Ruoyan. Ostensibly, the banquet was an old friends reunion, but actually it was meant to trigger her memories through familiar people and settings. That day, Liu Ruoyan wore a dress Jibo Chong specifically prepared. It was indeed beautiful, visibly expensive at a glance. But as she stood in the banquet hall entrance, her expression grew increasingly stiff. She didn't recognize a single person there. They came up warmly to greet her. Ruyan, long time no see. Ruyan, you look so beautiful today. Liu Ruoyan smiled politely, but her hand was constantly searching for something. After a while, she grabbed the corner of my shirt. She didn't say a word, just clutching that small piece of my clothes. I looked down at her hand. Her knuckles were white. I leaned into her ear and whispered, "Are you uncomfortable?" She didn't answer. She just gripped my shirt even tighter. 20 minutes later, I made an excuse and slipped out with her through the side door. When the evening breeze blew, Liu Ruoyan took a deep breath, like a person drowning finally surfacing for air. They say they know me, but they feel like strangers. She walked beside me with her head down, her voice muffled. I look at their faces and feel nothing at all. I didn't know how to comfort her, so I just asked, "Are you hungry?" She looked up, her eyes a bit red. "Let's go have BBQ." We found a BBQ stall on the roadside, with plastic stools and a steel table under a dim yellow light bulb. The noisy chatter blended with the sizzling oily smoke. It was a completely different world from the banquet hall, but Liu Ruoyan clearly relaxed after sitting down. She sat on the small stool with her legs apart, eating one skewer after another, devouring the mutton kebabs. Her cheeks were stuffed, and she didn't even bother wiping the chili oil from her mouth. "Delicious," she said indistinctly. "Slow down, no one's taking it from you." "Then I want 10 skewers of pork belly. Can you finish all that? If I can't, you help me eat it." He spoke as if it were a matter of course, and then pointed at the menu again. "Add 2 more skewers of chicken wings, 1 grilled eggplant, 2 bottles of beer, and so on. Can you even drink?" "I can handle 3 bottles." I couldn't help but laugh. "Didn't you used to avoid alcohol?" "Who says? I feel like drinking now." He raised his eyebrows. "Why, won't you let me?" "Fine, anything for Her Highness," and gave me a playful kick with a smile. "Stop being cheeky." We just sat there on the roadside, drinking beer, and chatting about this and that. He said the cat next door today meowed at him twice. He said has been learning to read me lately. He said the guest's expression in the variety show he watched today was hilarious. It was all trivial little things, but for some reason, I was listening very intently. The night breeze was mixed with the smoky aroma of BBQ. The light bulb swayed slightly over his head, casting a layer of warm yellow light on his face. He drank a bit too much beer, and a faint pink flush appeared on his cheeks. His eyes were sparkling. I suddenly realized this scene looked a lot like 3 years ago. Back then, we were just like this, eating BBQ at a roadside stall after work, chatting about anything and everything while eating. At that time I thought that days like these would last forever. Only later did I realize that forever is the most expensive promise in the world. Zhao Yuhong, he suddenly called my full name. "Yeah, when we came to pick me up today, you ran really fast." He looked down while peeling garlic, his tone nonchalant, but the tips of his ears were red. "Yeah? Were you in a rush?" I said. He didn't respond. After a while, he stuffed the peeled garlic into my mouth. When his fingers touched my lips, he pulled his hand back faster than anything. I pretended not to notice anything, but I couldn't sleep that night. I was lying on the sofa staring at the ceiling for a long time. What kept replaying in my head wasn't anything else, but the way he smiled secretly after kicking me at the BBQ stall. "Zhao Yuheng, calm down. You're just a temporary caregiver. But a caregiver's heart shouldn't beat this fast, right?" On a Sunday afternoon, we were curled up on the sofa watching a variety show. It was that comedy show we followed together 3 years ago. He found it while going through my video favorites. "You actually still have this?" he exclaimed in surprise. "Of course I do. After that show went off the air, I never watched it again, but the file had been sitting in my favorites, just like his contact info. I couldn't delete it, and I didn't dare to." He curled up at the other end of the sofa, hugging a pillow, doubled over with laughter. I sat on the other end, laughing along with him. It felt like time had turned back. As we laughed, he suddenly leaned over and showed me a screenshot on his phone. It was a WeChat chat log. I took one look and froze. It was a conversation from 3 years ago. He had kept it all this time. In the screenshot was a message I sent him. "Wife, it's getting cold today. Dress warmly. Wife, a new milk tea shop opened downstairs from your office. I brought a drink for you. Guess what flavor it is? Honey, I think that ragdoll cat was pretty cute. How about we get one?" Every message was followed by a string of exclamation marks and random emojis. Back then, Zhao Yuhang was incredibly enthusiastic. I stared at those messages for a long time. So long that the screen dimmed. Liu Ruoyan tilted her head to look at my expression. "Why aren't you saying anything?" "Nothing," I said, turning off the phone. "I just think I was pretty foolish back then." "Foolish?" His voice suddenly turned quiet. "I think it was quite nice." He took the phone back, staring at the paused variety show on the screen. He didn't speak for a long while. Then he asked a question that made my back go stiff. "Zhao Yuheng, were you very much in love before?" The living room was silent. The TV was paused on a comical shot of a guest grimacing. The sound of children playing downstairs drifted in through the window. I didn't know how to answer. If I said yes, I would be taking advantage of him. He has amnesia now, and doesn't remember me. How did you two break up? I have no right to say such things at a time like this, but I couldn't bring myself to say no. In this lifetime, to have me say to Liu Ruoyan, I just couldn't say it. About the past, once your memory returns, you'll know for yourself. I stood up to flee, almost escaping into the kitchen. "He'll go get you a glass of water." There were no footsteps following me, but I could feel his gaze fixed on my back. On Wednesday, I took Liu Ruoyan to the hospital for a checkup. After the results came out, the doctor called me outside the consulting room. The memory is showing signs of recovery, faster than expected. The doctor said it might all come back within a few days. I nodded. "That's good." The doctor hesitated for a moment. "Mr. Zhao, there's something I need to tell you in advance. When he regains his memory, he will also regain all the emotions from before the amnesia, including his feelings towards you. If there was any unpleasantness between you," he didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning was clear. "He would remember everything, including the divorce, including the arguments and disappointments from back then, including why he left me. I understand." On the way home, Liu Ruoyan held my arm, chattering all the way. While waiting for the appointment, he saw a child holding a toy dinosaur. The dinosaur was wearing a little dress and was very cute. He kept talking about it, laughing constantly. Listening to his voice, I suddenly felt a sense of calm before the storm. The liveliness of these past few days, the warmth and the chatter, felt like a dream, but one always has to wake up from a dream. Late that night, I was startled awake by a noise. The bedroom light was on. I sat up and saw Liu Ruoyan, standing at the bedroom door, leaning against the frame. She was in her pajamas. Her hair was a bit messy, and her face looked almost translucent under the light. The way he looked at me was completely different than before. Before, there was dependency in his eyes. intimacy, and a kind of girlish vulnerability. Now, his gaze was cold, distant with something hidden deep in his eyes. The pain I had suppressed for so long. I knew then that he remembered. You remember everything now? He didn't answer immediately. After a long time, his voice finally forced its way out of his throat, hoarse and dry. Zhao Yuhong, 3 years ago. Why didn't you ask me to stay? A tear slid down from the corner of his eye. He didn't wipe it away, just letting it roll down his cheek. I sat on the sofa. He stood 3 steps away. Those 3 steps felt as far apart as 3 years. Why? He asked again, his voice beginning to tremble. When I asked for a divorce, why did you just sign the papers like that? You wouldn't even say a single don't go. He took a deep breath, but it seemed to catch in his chest. He couldn't get enough air. Do you have any idea how long I stood outside the Civil Affairs Bureau? I stood there for 40 minutes. I kept waiting for you to come after me. Even after that final paper was signed, I was still waiting for you to rush out, to snatch the divorce agreement away, waiting for you to grab my hand and demand. His tears finally overflowed, falling one by one. I waited for 40 minutes, but you never came. In the living room, only his muffled sobbing remained. I sat on the sofa, my nails digging deep into my palms. I knew why he had asked for the divorce. On the surface he said I was a loser, and that there was no hope for the future with me. But Lu Ruyan was never someone who favored the rich and despised the poor. He said those harsh things on purpose. He was trying to push me to talk back, to make me beg him to stay, to make me prove that I cared about him. But the Zhao Yuheng of 3 years ago didn't understand. The Zhao Yuheng of 3 years ago only heard those piercing words, only saw that cold expression, and truly believed that he had grown to resent me. I always thought he was the one who gave up on me, but actually I was the one who gave up on myself first. I felt that. He was right. I really was a loser. My salary was low. My looks were average. I couldn't give him what others could. Instead of making him suffer with me, it was better to let go so he could have a better life. So I signed. So I didn't follow him. So he stood at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau and waited for 40 minutes, waiting for someone who would never come. Ruyan, I stood up and walked over to him. He didn't pull away. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face, his chin still trembling slightly. Ruyan, sorry. I don't want to hear it. I'm sorry. It wasn't that I didn't love you. I interrupted him, my voice trembling as well. It was never that I didn't love you. He froze. It was. I said it because I felt I wasn't good enough for you. When you said those things, it wasn't that I didn't want to keep you. It was that I believed you were right. You deserved someone better. His mouth hung open, tears welling up once again. I didn't want you to suffer with me. My voice grew lower and lower. So low it was, almost a whisper to myself. I thought letting go was best for you. I thought you would be happier. But I wasn't. He spoke softly, but every word struck my heart. I wasn't any happier. His tears had been falling like broken strings for 3 years now. I spent the holidays alone, moved house alone, and went to the hospital alone. Every time I was sad, I would think, if only you were here. He sniffled hard, sobbing uncontrollably. Zhao Youyu, you big idiot. When I asked for a divorce back then, I just wanted you to chase after me. But you actually signed it. And after signing, you politely told me, I wish you happiness. Do you know how much I wanted to hit you then? He cried harder and harder, pounding on my chest as he sobbed. The blows weren't heavy. He was like a bullied child, so aggrieved that he could only flail his fists. I reached out and pulled him into a hug. He stiffened for a moment, then went limp in my arms. His tears soaked my t-shirt, the warmth spreading from my chest to my heart. I held him and closed my eyes. I'm sorry, I should have chased after you. He cried silently in my arms for a long time, until he started hiccuping. Finally he looked up, glaring at me with red eyes. Is it too late to start chasing now? I looked at his swollen eyes and messy hair, and couldn't help but smile. It's not too late. Go ahead and chase me. Isn't that what I'm doing now? He shot me a look, buried his face back in my chest, and muttered. You're so slow. I held him a little tighter. Outside, a light rain had begun to fall. The raindrops tapped against the glass. Pitter-patter. The living room light was still on. Hez afraid of the dark. So I leave it on every night. It turns out that some habits haven't changed in 3 years. When he finally cried himself out, and fell fast asleep in my arms, I gently laid him on the bed, and tucked him in. I walked out to the balcony, watched the night rain outside, and sent a WeChat message to Jibo Chang. He remembers everything. He chose me. I'm sorry, and thank you for being so patient lately. After sending the message, I let out a long sigh of relief. The next morning, the doorbell rang. Li Ruyan went to open the door first. Jibo Chang was standing there, holding a set of keys. It was the spare set La Ruyan had left with him. He was wearing that dark blue coat he'd seen many times, and his hair was perfectly groomed. He looked no different than usual, but the dark circles around his eyes gave away how exhausted he was, like he hadn't slept in days. Ruyan, he called. Lu Ruyan stood at the door, without saying a word. His eyes had changed. No longer the blank stare of a stranger when he had amnesia. He remembered him now. Your memory is back, Jibo Chang said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Last night, Zhao Yu had messaged me, and I knew. He glanced at me behind him, then looked at his face again. He understood everything. He had likely been waiting for him to remember, waiting for him to return to her side. But what she waited for wasn't a reunion. It was a farewell. The corner of Jibo Chang's mouth twitched. That smile was faint, almost imperceptible. I probably knew all along. His voice was calm, heartbreakingly calm. The way you look at him is different from how you look at me. Li Ruyan lowered her head. I'm sorry, she said. Jibo Chang shook his head. No need to say sorry. He placed the key on the shoe cabinet by the door. You didn't do anything wrong. He looked at me. Our eyes met. For a moment, it was silent. He didn't say anything harsh, nor did he make any threats. He just gave a small nod. That nod felt like a handover, and like a final blessing. Zhao Yuhen, he said. Take good care of her. I will. He took one last look at Lu Ruyan. That look held so much reluctance, regret, and what-if scenarios, but also the relief of finally letting go. Then he turned and walked away. The sound of his footsteps faded in the hallway, followed by the soft chime of the elevator closing. Lu Ruyan stood at the door, dazed for a long while. I walked over and stood beside her. She turned her head to look at me, her eyes slightly red. He was actually very good to me. I know, but he isn't you. When she said this, her voice was very, very soft, like a feather landing on water. I reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. There isn't much to say about what happened after. Lu Ruyan didn't move out. As for the bulky luggage in the luxury apartment from those 3 years, she left it all to the movers to handle and return the lease. Only keeping the essentials. She moved in with me. She said her bags were already unpacked, and she was too lazy to move again. So she'd rather squeeze into this 50 square meter place. I said, then pay half the rent. She said, in your dreams. I said, at least stay out of the kitchen. She said, that's negotiable. Life went on like that. Much like 3 years ago. But also a little different. What stayed the same was that we still bicker over trivial little things. She nags about my messy socks. I nag about her taking too long in the bathroom. What's different is that halfway through every argument, we can't help but burst out laughing, because we both know some words aren't meant. Some people are only cherished after they leave, and some things are always worth saying again. That night, we sat side by side on the balcony. She leaned on my shoulder, holding a cup of warm milk. The city lights were distant, flickering in the far-off night. The breeze carried the chill of early autumn. 사유hen? Yeah. If I hadn't signaled back then, would we never have spoken again? I thought about it. Probably. She was silent for a moment. Then should I thank my brain? Thank it? For choosing for me. Her voice carried a hint of amusement. When he forgot everything, he still remembered you. I didn't say a word, but I held his hand a little tighter. His palm was warm. Just as warm as it was 3 years ago. The living room light was still on. But this time, it wasn't because he was afraid of the dark. It was because I never wanted him to walk into any kind of darkness again.